We are about to jump into a really cute Cricut project using felt. And if you've never used felt before with your Cricut, I definitely recommend using the maker and the rotary blade because it can just roll and cut instead of dragging along the fabric. And you will be so much happier with how your felt cuts. It kind of feels like magic. We're gonna do this lovely felt banner with 3 flowers on it. There's a full peony, a peony bud, and a magnolia. A couple of tips about choosing felt. I love the Benzie brand. Benzie felt is pretty dense, and so not only does it cut smoothly, it's going to keep its structure when you have the leaves sticking up just a little bit or the petals that are kind of poofing out. And it doesn't tear very easily when you're pulling it off the mat. But if you're just using really cheap acrylic felt from the craft store, you might notice that everything just flops over and it's much easier to tear that felt apart just because it's a little flimsier. So there's just a couple of things to note. For choosing the colors, pick one of their design packs. You'll get sheets of coordinating colors, and if you like the way that that bundle looks together, you know that you're going to like the way your finished project looks. For hanging the banner, you'll need a 1/4 inch dowel. You can either get those at the craft store or the home repair store, and then about 36 inches of ribbon that's going to match your felt colors. Design space first. We'll talk about how to design and cut them and prep the mat, and then we'll go through the cutting process, and then finally putting everything together. Okay, so first things first in Design Space, pretty straightforward. We're just going to upload all 4 SVG files that I made for this class. Click Upload and then click Browse, and then go to the place where you've saved the files. We're going to have the banner flag, the leafy branch, the magnolia flower, and the peonies flowers. You do have to do this one at a time. Since they're all SVG files, all you have to do is click Upload. And then when they're all here in your upload library, you can come in, click on all 4, and click Add to Canvas. It might take a second because a couple of them are pretty large files, but that's okay. And then we need to make just a couple of adjustments before we start cutting. The banner and the branch, I'm going to just hide them each right now. I don't need to do anything with them. For the magnolia flower, click on it and then click Ungroup. So this rectangle right here, select it along with all of the little vertical cut lines. Select those all together and hit Attach. That way the blade will just cut little slits all the way down there, and then we'll roll that up and that'll be the center of our flower. Okay, and then you can hide all those pieces. Then we're going to come over here to the peony file. Again, Ungroup. And here we have lots of the petals have a little slit in them that's going to help us with the shape that we make later. So you can click and drag on a section of the petals. Make sure you include all those little vertical lines that are in there for the slit cuts and hit Attach. And then same thing for the rolled center fringe piece. Select them all and hit Attach. Okay, and now we can move on to cutting each of these out of our different colors of felt. We need to make sure to change the material size because our felt is only 9 by 12 inches. And so this will change the colored spot on the mat so that we can make sure all of our petals are going to fit inside the dimensions of the felt that we're using. You'll see first here I changed it to a pink color and cut it from pink felt, but then I actually didn't like it and went back and recut with a white felt for the petals. I'm pretty sure these will fit, but I'm going to also go ahead and change this to the 9 by 12 so that everything fits in the borders, and then I'll spread it out just a little bit so there's a little bit of room between these different pieces. Now I'll have it connect to my machine and I need to go browse for the correct material. I'm going to search for wool, And that will pull up this felt wool fabric option. So I'm going to click on that and then hit done. I also need to click edit tools because I'm not using the fine point blade. I'm going to use the rotary blade. So this is the rotary blade tool. If you buy the Maker 3, you have to buy this separately. If you buy a Maker, it comes with it. And you can see it's all one piece. It has the blade and then the gears on top. So it goes into clamp B, just like where the fine point blade would go. So I've pressed a piece of felt down onto the mat, and it's going to load in the mat all the way to the end, and then kind of spit it back out. The blade comes over to the center, and then the other button starts flashing, and so you push that, and then it will go over to the side, and it will double check that the correct blade is installed, and then it will start cutting. When it's finished, the arrow button will flash, and you can unload the mat. And then I like to peel up the extra felt just from the corner and pull it all away from the mat. And then use this little flat spatula to get under the edges and start to lift up the felt. And then once a big part is off, then you can grab the rest with your fingers and kind of wiggle it off. This helps keep the correct shape. You're not stretching the felt, and I'm not also ruining the edges by trying to dig under it with my fingernails. You'll notice that left a pretty good outline of where all of the felt was cut. And one way you can kind of extend the life of your mat or keep that from happening with the felt is take a piece of contact paper or transfer tape and put it sticky side up on your mat. And then the felt will stick to that, and then your mat stays sticky longer. So repeat cutting the pieces of the green and the yellow for our magnolia flower. And I use the spatula again, even when lifting off of the transfer tape. So just like before, we're going to make sure that everything will fit on a 9 by 12 piece of felt. So you'll change the size and rearrange any pieces that you need to. Then hit continue, connect to the Maker, choose the wool felt, and you can also click right here where it says to remember these settings, and then you won't have to choose this every new mat. And then you're also going to change to the rotary blade instead of the fine point blade. My transfer tape was very cut up at this point, and so I used my scraper tool to just remove all the little bits of the transfer tape off, and then I replaced it with a new piece of transfer tape. Then I cut out the banner flag shape and the leaf branches. I want 2 of them, and I want one to be a little bit larger than the other one. And it's a little tricky to size it like this. So I'm going to just take it and rotate the shape a little bit, and then use the grid markers on the canvas here so that one is past the 5-inch line and one of them is less than that. And then this is going to be the last felt mat that we cut out, and then just like we've done before, the felt setting with the rotary blade. All right, and now we finally get to the extra fun part. We get to start building and gluing all these pieces together. Okay, so first I'm working on the peony blossom, and you're going to have all of these little petal shapes, and the way that you're going to form them is along the slit on the bottom, put a little bit of glue and overlap the other side. Hold it for a little bit until it sets, and then on the top part, put a little bit of glue right here by this small slit and overlap that other little part so that it basically becomes one center arch in the middle of the petal. So again, just a little bit on the top part where it's slit and then overlap the other side. And on the longer bottom part, put some glue and overlap the other half. So it creates 3 little bumps on the top of the petal and brings the whole petal into a little curved shape. I wish it went this fast. Sorry, it doesn't. But this is a good time. Once you kind of get into the groove of how these petals go together, you can just turn on some music or a show or something. And then we've got this center piece that just has all these fringe cuts on it. And we're just going to roll that up, securing every couple of turns with a bit of hot glue. And that's going to be the center of the flower. Next, you're going to separate out all of these petals by size. So find the smallest ones first. There are 3, and you're going to glue them around this center yellow piece. So I mostly put glue just on this bottom part here, and then just glued it right on the bottom of this little rolled up fringe piece. Repeat with the other 2 smallest petals, spacing them evenly around in thirds. And that one was sticking up a little bit too much on the side, and so I pulled it before the glue had cooled off and pulled it back down just a little bit. Don't worry if you're starting to get a little concerned at this point. I promise it's going to come together and be a beautiful flower when we're finished. Okay, find the next size up and repeat this process, putting each of these petals where the gap is between the first layer of petals. So keep adding these petals around. I'm not putting the base of the petal all the way underneath anymore. I'm kind of bringing them up the sides. And then the largest size, there are 5 petals, so just space them evenly around the edges, and then you can kind of squish them in and make them look like they're kind of up and around the center part of our flower. The final piece on the flower is to just cover up the bottom part with this little star-shaped green piece. Okay, so this is the magnolia that I originally made pink, and it had some problems. I didn't like it, so I cut it out again in white. It has a fringe piece just like the other flower did, and so I've already glued that up together, and I put a little bit of glue at the bottom of the leaves and pinched those up. Okay, now, so for each of these tri-corner pieces, there's a little slit, and you're going to put just a little tiny drop of glue and fold those in and pinch them together. That's what gives the tip of these petals their really pointy look. So on this flower, there are 2 layers that are the same size, and then another layer that's a little bit smaller, and that will be the top layer. After the flower points are all pinched in, you're going to do another little glued pinch right by the center of the flower. You'll do it on each of the 3 sides, and it kind of curves up the inside part of the petal as well. So after you do the first one, the shape is going to look a little bit funny, but don't worry, it'll get fixed when you do the other 2. So like I said, you're just trying to pinch it right in by the center, and it really does change the shape of each of these petals. And once all 3 of them are done, they come back into their triangle shape again. So take the 2 layers that are the same size and glue them together to where they're offset just a little bit. Then you can fill in the rest of the space with the top layer of petals. Finally, add some glue to the bottom of our little fringe rosette and glue it down into the center of the magnolia flower. Don't worry about adding any of the leaves yet, we'll do that later on the banner. And finally, we have our little flower bud. These pieces made me giggle a little bit. I feel like they all look like lily pads, but we're going to fix them up so that they look like a little flower bud and not like lily pads anymore. Okay, so each of these little 3 green pieces, put a little bit of glue by the slit and overlap them. And then here, just like we did on the other large peony blossom, put a little bit on top by the slit, overlap so that you get a little ruffle shape on the top of the petal. And you can see you don't need very much hot glue, just a little bit will make it stick, and it's better because then it won't soak through and make the felt look dark, and you're less likely to get a bad burn on your finger because there's just not so much glue there. When all of the petals have been glued into their proper shape, we need to make a little center for our bud. So you can take a little scrap piece of felt and just roll it up a little bit and glue it so it's kind of like a little ball. Or if you have a small pom-pom or a little foam ball, then we can use that. You're just going to take a scrap of the felt and glue it around the felt ball. It doesn't even need to cover it completely. You just want to cover up some of the white or have something that's the very, very center. Okay, then you're going to take the 3 smallest petals and glue them around the little center that you just made. And you're basically building up something that looks like a little head of cabbage. So put on those first 3 petals and then layer around the 4 other petals. And then the very last part will be the 3 little bud leaves. Those just need a little bit of glue at the bottom, and then they get glued under the bottom of the whole flower. Okay, so now that everything is glued, we can take the heat gun and pass it over any parts where there's kind of some white hot glue residue left or the little hot glue stringies, and that just cleans it up a little more and makes it look really nice. Make sure you're careful of your fingers when you're using the heat gun. Mine is just kind of a low temp heat gun that's made for crafting. If you have a real heavy duty one, then definitely be careful because those can be really hot. You can also use a hair dryer. That should have enough warmth to just kind of make all that hot glue disappear on the edges. Now I can take all of the finished flowers and start laying them out on the banner base without gluing anything yet. You can play with your placement and arrangement. That way we can make sure everything is in a place that we like it before we actually start gluing things down. The trickiest thing for me was just deciding which way I wanted the little flower bud to be facing. So with all of the flowers laid out, then I'm going to look and see where I want the leaf branches to go and also the little individual leaves that came with the flower files. One suggestion that I have is to make sure that your flowers are grouped kind of tightly together. You don't want to really have any space where the background is showing through. It just makes it look more like a flower arrangement instead of randomly placed flowers. So when I was happy with where everything was, then I started to carefully glue in starting from the back. So these little leaf branches or vines are going to get glued down first. And I'm just using a teeny bit of glue in a few places because I don't want any of the glue to squish out and become visible. When the little leaf branches are down, then I glued in the flowers and then tucked in the leaves around them. So my dowel here is cut to 10 inches long. If you want your dowel to stick out even farther, then just make it longer. I tape down the edges so that it won't roll at all while I'm putting the glue on it. And before there's glue, I'm going to kind of position the whole banner here so that I can see it sticking up a little bit and then it's centered on the dowel as well. So then just fold down the top part of the banner so it's out of the way, and then use the glue gun to add a strip of glue. Try to remember to not go all the way to the end when you're putting the glue down. And then just roll that back up. It'll be close to the same spot. And then again, just position that so that it's sticking up over the top just a little bit and centered from side to side. If the glue went too far, you can wipe it off, or it's going to be covered up with the hanging ribbon here in a minute anyway. So you can remove the tape that was holding it down to the table, flip it over, and make sure that there was contact all the way across the back. I do think it's best to add this after the flowers are already glued on, just so that for that part you are working with a flat surface. Then finally, take your ribbon and tie knots on the ends of the dowel so that it can hang up. You can also secure those knots with a little bit of hot glue if you want to. All right, so I hope you learned some really cool stuff about working with felt with the Cricut and with making these felt flowers. At this point with the banner, you can hang it as is and just leave it as this kind of simple decoration. You could also use iron-on vinyl or another color of felt to cut out an initial or a name. If the letters are really small, I would definitely recommend the iron-on vinyl. Something bigger or thicker would work with the felt. Also, you can use this to hang up and display all of your cute little flare pins. Let me show you a few that I've got. All right, so here are just a few that I have in my collection, just some cute things that I've collected over the years. Sometimes they're on my bag or my backpack. So this is just another fun thing to do with this pretty banner. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you around the internet. Bye.